it possible even to enjoy unity in the context of diversity? And I think what I'm asking is, are they mutually exclusive, where the presence of one determines the absence of the other? So if you have unity, you can't have diversity. If you have diversity, you can't have unity. What are your thoughts on that? And the second question that I want to follow up with is uniformity. Uniformity means that you force everyone to think, act, and behave the same way, and you demand conformity at the expense of one's individuality. But is uniformity the prerequisite for unity? And I think these are very relevant questions for the diverse world and context that we find ourselves in. You know, the United States is the melting pot of different cultures and persuasions. In our schools and in our workplaces, we're surrounded by diversity. If you happen to be married, you know that you and your spouse are identical. Just kidding. But you have tons of differences. And there was once upon a time where those differences were alluring. Now they're just annoying. The founder of eHarmony was quoted for saying that opposites attract and then they attack. And even in our faith communities, where we think we would have so much in common, we have endless differences. We have our different upbringings in this room. We have our different personalities. We have our different philosophies. We have our different priorities. We have our different approaches. You may think, I wouldn't do it like that, because you have your own approach. We have different sensitivities because of all the other differences I just listed. We have different expectations based on everything else that was on that list of our differences. And I think even in this room, we express love differently and we interpret love differently. Therefore, Gary Chapman wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages, saying even when it comes to expressing and interpreting love, we have our differences. So in the midst of so much diversity, is peace and harmony possible? Or does our diverse world have to be marked by hostility, violence, prejudice, paranoia, and arrogances? Is peace and harmony in all the world, is it possible? But Paul wrote to the early Christian communities, do all you can to live in peace with everyone. With everyone. And he was talking to Christians who were the minority at the time. They were the other. And he's writing to them saying, do all you can to live at peace with everyone. But I want to ask a question. If unity can only come through uniformity, and that's what we believe, that there's no unity apart from uniformity, should we be all working toward uniformity? Is uniformity God's dream for humanity? Yes. When it comes to conforming to the divine laws of love and abiding by the golden rule and following the commandments of Jesus to love God and love our neighbor, yes, it is God's dream that there be uniformity. No, when it comes to our personalities, our approaches, our gifting, and even our ideas. So yes, when it comes to divine priorities and righteous principles, but no, when it comes to human personality or preferences. I hope you're still tracking with me, because if God wanted uniformity in every way possible, then why would he create such a diverse world? Why are there so many possible color options and configurations? Why the millions of species? Why the 400,000 different kind of flowers and the 600,000 different kind of plants just on this planet? Why would he give us unique personalities? And I know if you're parents of multiple children, you know that they come with the personalities. You can raise them the same way, feed them the same food, but they come with built-in personalities that are different. And why would God give us a free will if he just wanted everyone to be uniformed as robots? Should our goal be uniformity, or should it be unity in diversity? Should we seek to fight for uniformity, so we should try to create a world that even God didn't create? Should we confiscate people's free will? Should we not allow people to have a differing opinion? Should we be muting everyone's speech? Should we murder everyone who disagrees with us? Should we, and maybe you won't murder, but should we intimidate, control, and be demeaning towards those who differ from us? Because uniformity is produced and protected by a hierarchical system of intimidation, control, and domination. Intimidation, control, and domination build a hierarchical system, and that is what perpetuates uniformity. And it can be very dehumanizing. Not just that, but if you're forcing uniformity, now you're destroying authenticity, and you're preventing creative expression. And God, He wired us for us to be able to be authentically us, and then to be able to release our personal creativity. Now, I'm not convinced that God's will is uniformity. Have you ever read Psalm 133, verse 1? How good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in uniformity. That's not how it reads. How good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in unity. He did not write how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in uniformity. And he explains that when there's unity, that's where the blessing of God falls. And you know, us as followers of Jesus, we're not called to be dictators. Dictators control. Dictators intimidate. Dictators confiscate free will. We're called to be servants. Well, I believe, and I want to propose this morning, that the secret to unity in a world of diversity is not uniformity, it's humility. Not uniformity, it's humility. While some may argue, no, there can never be unity apart from uniformity. But there's no unity without humility. You know, when there's humility, we can respectfully disagree, not hatefully disagree. You know, it's not that it's uniformity we need, it's humility that we're lacking. And if I think my ways, my ideas, and my needs are superior to yours, then unity becomes very difficult to achieve. Let's take it a step further. If I determine that your ways and your ideas are demonic and evil, there'll be little place for dialogue, only place for war. I think about Adolf Hitler and how he prepared the world for the Holocaust. He did a lot of prep work. He laid the primer for years and years and years. And he prepared the world for the horrors of the Holocaust by demonizing those who were of a different religion, culture, and those who had different priorities. He made the Jews the other, and he continued to demonize them with his propaganda. And not just that, but then he had to make his people, at least influence his people, to believe that they were the superior race. And through propaganda, through subliminal messages, through his speeches, he was communicating just that. So by demonizing the other and by elevating the insider, he set the stage for one of the greatest crimes against humanity. He sowed those seeds of hate and strategically watered them through the media, and the Holocaust was the harvest. But we're supposed to be people who have strong convictions, yet a respectful gentleness towards others. Look with me, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. So you better know where you stand when it comes to who you believe Jesus is and who Jesus is to you. But always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. So you ought to be somebody with conviction. And you ought to stand for your convictions too. You ought not to just shy away from all arguments and say, okay, you win, you're smarter, I don't know anything. But you're supposed to make a stand saying, this is the reason why I do what I do. This is the reason why I believe what I believe. Let me explain to you. Let me share with you my journey and my experience and my perspective. But he says, but do this with gentleness and respect, not with a sense of arrogance. I love this verse because it affirms a personal conviction, but it's saying you don't need to compromise your convictions, but you should be able to defend them. So this verse encourages us not to have a superiority complex, and so we ought to be able to be gentle and respectful, but we're not supposed to have an inferiority complex where you're easily controlled by others. We should not be controlled by somebody else's intimidation and bigotry. We should have our own beliefs that we can't get easily bullied out of, things that we fought for and that you've personalized. Yet, should we be harsh and arrogant towards those who don't share the core beliefs? The answer is a resounding no. And instead of relating in fear with those who are different, we're supposed to relate in love. Now, again, I am not saying that we're permissive and we promote sin. I'm not saying that. But we're supposed to relate to people in love. You know, when this universe was designed to operate by love, that's why this whole world falls apart when we're not operating in love. But this is what John the Apostle writes. For there is no fear in love. Perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. When it comes to people who are different, do we fear them or do we love them? Now, if we love them, what is love supposed to look like? Now, love is not agreement. Love is not agreement. Some people believe that it is, so they say, I can't love you because I don't agree with you. And if you don't agree with me, I automatically conclude you don't love me. But you know, when John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world, that doesn't mean God so agrees with everything happening in the world. Love is not agreement. You know, Jesus, he taught us, do to others as you would have them do to you. We call that the golden rule. How would you want people to treat you over your differences? How would you want them to relate to you regarding your differences? How would you want people to treat you? Would you want them to respect you, or would you want them to verbally assault you? I don't think any of us would want to be hated, rejected, or have people be nasty towards us just because of our differences. I think we would want them to give us an opportunity to share the reasons why we believe what we believe. I think we would want to be heard. I don't think we would want to be demonized. But there are some things that aren't in the evil category, and yet somebody will find reason to crucify you for it. Jesus was not crucified for his sins. He was crucified for his differences. Listen carefully. Jesus was not crucified for his sins. In the economy of God, Jesus never sinned. So Jesus was not crucified for sin against God. He was crucified for his differences. And I think that is so reflective of people who have this nasty religious spirit, is that they're crucifying you, they're terminating relationships over things that aren't even sin before the eyes of God. It's just differences. Have you ever met people who always think they hear from God perfectly and infallibly? And if you disagree with them, you're disagreeing with God, and now they treat you as if you're satanic. I know this sounds ridiculous, and I got the giggles, but it's something that I've dealt with for 5 years on a regular basis. On a regular basis. People claiming to perfectly hear from God, and their spiritual antennas are far superior to mine, and if I don't do what they suggest, they want nothing more to do with me. I want to share with you why I'm so passionate about this message. When what you think God is telling you, that's subjective. But the commandment of Jesus to love one another is objective. So what a shame to violate what's objective because you're fighting for what's subjective. And I just found it so astonishing how vicious people can be towards those they disagree with. And you know, I guess what breaks my heart over and over is like, can't we just respectfully disagree and just remain in fellowship and continue hand in hand, heart to heart? And I think over the years, and maybe some of you have noticed this, and I'm just letting you know where I am. I've become more guarded and cynical because I'm wondering every time I meet somebody else, I'm asking myself the question, you only love me if you can control me? Do you only love me as long as my ideas mirror yours? Do you only care about me if I do things your way? Or are you going to be like others who, as soon as we don't agree, you throw me under the bus, you put me on your naughty list, and you either leave the church ticked or you stay ticked. And you remain here with such a terrible attitude. I began asking myself, are there even safe people out there? And by the way, my definition of safe is not agreeable. I'm not after uniformity. But my definition of safe is people who absolutely love you in the midst of disagreements and differences. And so to be on the receiving end of this over and over again, year after year after year, nonstop, I finally began to be convicted of all the times and all the ways that I've been on the giving end of this kind of loveless arrogance. I was convicted of all the times I felt like my ideas and my insights were far superior to others. I began to repent of this attitude that I had towards people I felt were missing God when they were merely missing my opinions. I began to just mourn over all the times I felt so angered by decisions that were made by others or by authority figures or by my leaders. And it was not even an issue of sin, and they did not have evil intention in their heart. It's just not the way I would have done it. Like that was in me. That was in me, and I realized that is so sinful, dark, and evil. It's not love, it's fear. It's not humility, it's pride. It does not produce greater unity, which is the dream of our Lord Jesus Christ. It just produced strife and division. Historically, the human race, particularly the religious establishment, have been violent and vicious towards the other. And we don't know how to respectfully disagree. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1 and 2, Paul says, "But knowledge puffs up while love builds up. If anyone claims to know all the answers, really doesn't know very much." If we think our ideas and our opinions are infallible and irrefutable, inarguable, it's just evidence that we've been puffed up with pride, deflated and depleted of love. And when we believe that we are infallible, now we cannot have open dialogue with others. And now we are incapable of experiencing unity in the midst of diversity. Well, if I want to sum up the way of Jesus, it's the way of love and the way of humility. Love is the epitome of spirituality.